Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jevly, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so happy and so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, wherever you find your podcast. We have two wonderful guests today. They're the author and illustrator of Don't Eat Bees, Dev Petty and Mike Boldt. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Carry Me Home, the powerful and poignant middle grade novel by Janet Fox. A beautiful and haunting story that sucks you right in and doesn't let you go. It's a poignant reminder of the strength that kids can possess when they realize they're the only one holding their world together. I devoured it breathlessly, and it carried my heart away with it. That was a review by Kirby Larson, author of the Newbery Honor book, Hattie Big Sky. Carry Me Home. It's a great reminder that homelessness is not helplessness. Get your copy today. Make a big difference in your family. Carry Me Home by Janet Fox. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Scott Feld and Dax to the Max. Scott Feld is the best-selling author of Dax to the Max, and he's also the creator of Minds in Motion Power Parties and Power Quest, as well as the I'm Possible Power Session series. His mission through all of these programs is to bring awareness of the inner superpowers we all have, but most of us really don't know about. And because of that, we can't use it to benefit our lives. Scott's programs for kids, Dax to the Max, is an amazing book that your kids will absolutely love. It'll help your kids find the keys to unlock their inner superpowers that will make them unmesswithable. And, well, that means empowered from the inside out. Dax to the Max specifically shows kids how their imagination can trump any fear in any situation. Check out all the great things that Scott does at mindsinmotion.com and pick up your copy of Dax to the Max at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Hey, and did I mention Dax to the Max is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. And we also want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by I Don't Want to Turn 3, the fun picture book by Gramps Jeffrey. When does a toddler start to learn right from wrong? What happens in a family that influences a decision going through a young mind? I Don't Want to Turn 3 explores the interactions between family that is happening in just about every household in the world. Pick up your copy today. It's available at Amazon. I Don't Want to Turn 3 by Gramps Jeffrey. Our guests today are coming to us from Berkeley, California, and Alberta, and Canada. Please welcome to the show the author and illustrator of Don't Eat Bees, Dev Petty and Mike Boldt. Hey, Dev, Mike, how are you?
Hello.
Doing well. Thanks for having us, Jed.
That first voice you heard is Dev Petty, who's out in Berkeley, California. Dev, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about Don't Eat Bees, please.
Well, the full title is Don't Eat Bees, Life Lessons from Chip the Dog. With or from Life Lessons, Mike, from Chip the Dog? With Chip the Dog? Anyway, it's a dog's guidebook to what to eat and what not to eat. And punchline, it's bees are on the no list. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really, really from a dog's perspective. Chip, who may not be the brightest bulb, but is earnest and confident, and it was an absolute hoot to write. And there was nobody else on earth who could possibly have illustrated it, I'm sure.
That's really wonderful. I'm wondering, Mike, how did you illustrate first off, how do you illustrate not doing something? And how did you illustrate not eating bees, getting Chip to not eat bees?
So there's a thing that happens when I get a manuscript on my in my email submission saying like, hey, actually Jen, she'll ask, hey, what do you think of this manuscript? And I've kind of given Jen the rubber stamp that if ever a manuscript comes in that has Deb's name on it, just yes it. We'll do it, because I just love working with her so much. Her humor is great, and so when you're reading it and you're just laughing along with it, you're instantly laughing because you're visualizing these things in the narrative. I'm instantly picturing things that this is hilarious because in my head it looks like this, and this is hilarious, and how am I going to illustrate this? And you know when you read something like that and you instantly start drawing, it's generally a pretty good thing. So that happened with this for sure. And I mean, obviously the dog, I was instantly drawing lots of different dogs. It wasn't this exact Chip. There were a few different ones I wanted to go, but you knew he kind of had to be he had to have like a pretty unique and special look to him to be this character.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the character and the final image of the character that you chose.
So the final character, I wanted him to, as Deb said, like he is an earnest character. He comes by whatever he has, quite honestly. And it's like a lot of dogs when you think about them. So, like they can't help themselves for the most part. I mean, even when they do something bad or terrible, like they're looking at you like, oh, I love you. I know I did wrong, but I just love you so much. And can we still be friends? And so you want to kind of encompass some of these very typical dog traits into a character. And I don't know if he ended up being like a specific breed of dog. Someone said he was a Jack Russell. I don't know if he's quite a Jack Russell, but he is a dog. and yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. Sometimes you just kind of draw one and you're like, this is Chip.
Is it. Yeah. Well, Augie the doggy who keeps me safe here in the studio is Beagle and something else, and people think it's a Jack Russell. And I know that look that you're talking about because Augie is getting up there in age, and sometimes, even though we take him out late at night, he has an accident during the night. And you know, this morning when my beautiful wife woke up and she found that, and he just kind of like was hiding around the corner, and I'm like, dude, what'd you do now?
They know. They definitely do.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Dev. I'm looking at you outside your Berkeley home. You have some nice plants, and I'm also and we're looking at Mike, who looks like a life-size stormtrooper pointing a gun or a laser at him behind him. Just at first glance, for that, it looks like you guys are pretty different.
Actually, I mean, obviously we're kind of different, but we share the Star Wars thing. In fact, I had to turn off my phone because my text announcement is Han Solo saying, "I've got a bad feeling about this," which is remarkably on point. Like when you're all the time, like more than you think, because you'll say something like, "What could possibly go wrong?" and then I've got a bad feeling about this. So I'm a shameless Star Wars nerd. And in fact, I have all my other toys over here. But, I think sometimes that works. I hope we actually get to meet and hang out sometime. We've had the pleasure to, chat now and again on FaceTime, or Zoom. I think we probably have a lot in common. We both have kids and adore them and daughters. And, there's a lot of crossover, and we've got to have a pretty weird shared sense of humor, I think, to pull this stuff off.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dev. There's of course very different probably for sure, but I think we do have a ton in common, which is why I think illustrating your books comes so naturally to me. Like it's almost like illustrating some of my own work where I know what characters look like very quickly, and I don't have to work hard to figure out the personalities, and everything feels like, I just get the jokes and your humor, and
Yeah.
Well, and you're so good too at organizing how you tell a story. Like, when I'm writing something with Mike in mind, I have no limitations on it because I know that he'll just figure it out. So it never feels like it has to be, super narrative and clear, once upon a time this happened. I know I can talk in this weird dog voice and he's going to, yes, P's, no B's. He's going to figure it out somehow. And he does. He's incredibly intelligent and flexible about how to tell a story, which is awesome.
Well, it's really awesome that you guys get along so well. And I think it's amazing that we're living in a time, not only that, we're thousands of miles apart from each other, like a little triangle here on the continent of North America. And we can see and talk to each other. It's also just amazing that we're living in this time where people, thousands of miles apart from each other can collaborate so well, creating a story.
Yeah.
Go
Go ahead, Deb.
No, it's really cool. I hope I hope that there's a way eventually that I get to meet some of these great people I work with. I've never met even our editor or agent, in real life, but it is super flexible and it's cool.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
Yeah. I can't imagine what it was like in the time where you submitted everything through letters, or
Right.
how that worked even kind of before this was possible. I mean, it was phone calls a lot, I'm sure. And,
Yeah.
but you get a very different, I think a lot of times people also traveled to New York to meet with the editors and would hand deliver the artwork in the end. And because they didn't want it to get ruined shipping it there and stuff. And so, yeah, the process has changed so much. The internet has made the world feel a lot smaller, I think, than it is. Like, aside from the fact that Dev and I have never met in person, I do feel like she's one of my neighbors in a way. Because if I need to, I can send her a message or an email or something quickly, or even a direct message on Twitter. And we have a pretty good correspondence too.
Very cool. Dev, you mentioned that, one of the things dogs shouldn't do is eat bees. And that makes a lot of sense. I know that that's not instinctual for dogs because I've had dogs who tried unsuccessfully to eat some bees. What are some of the other things that dogs shouldn't do?
Well, I mean, in this book, he has a few things he suggests not eating. Lemons, fire. But a lot of things are told sort of through the things that he does eat and thinks are okay to eat, which probably most people would think that you shouldn't. So, grandpa's teeth or the Thanksgiving turkey or your owner's homework or work stuff. And I think that's what I like about this so much is that it has you were talking about that kind of earnestness of dogs. And I think, dogs have a funny logic. And I think that's what I wanted this to come off as. They have a logic and a sureness. Like Chip is sure. There's nothing in here. There's no sarcasm. He's not, it's just, he's sure that this is how things work. And so in a way, the whole story is told really through a whole bunch of things that he really shouldn't be eating, but at least they're not bees. So it was just a hoot to write. It really came out kind of all at once. And I could write in Chip speak all day. I think I talk in Chip speak, maybe.
I love that. I love that. You were mentioning, Mike, how much fun and just when the manuscripts from Dev come in, just give them the stamp and send them through. I know you've collaborated. I know you've collaborated on other projects. How quickly into the relationship did it get to that way? Just that you said, anything this person writes, I want to work on.
Probably realistically, it was minutes after I read the very first Frog book. Seriously, I remember I wasn't home and my agent had sent it to me, and I was checking my email on a friend's computer, and I read it, and I ran in because I was still kind of trying to break into publishing really, and I ran in and I told my wife, I said, I just got this amazing manuscript. I actually don't think I even read it all. I think I had gotten like halfway through. I was loving it so much and I didn't know what to do. I ran in, I told my wife I love it, and I ran back and I sent an email quickly to Ben saying, this manuscript, yes, please, like, let's do this. And so all the other books that have followed in line have all followed suit. Like I have almost every time I think I've instantly started drawing the characters right away, certain scenes or scenarios or situations, and this one was no different.
Yeah.
So,
Dev, Mike mentioned the Frog books. You wrote 4 Frog books. Tell us a little bit about that series, please.
It's similar in the sense of having a character with a strong voice. Though I think where Chip is really sure about everything, Frog is really not sure and a little, mired in a sort of perpetual, low grade existential crisis, about how things work. And I guess that's a decent way of explaining it. He's a little more complainy, I think, maybe. But, super fun thing. I mean, that was the first book that I ever sold, and it did really well. And then I had to actually learn how to write picture books, which I think I'm still a dragon I'm still trying to slay. I'm not sure you're ever done there, but I think maybe I've improved a little over time. It was a really, really fun series, and it's fun. They're in tons of languages, and it's fun to see them in paperback and board book, and I had no idea. I just decided to write about a frog. That's it. It's really simple.
I love that. It's amazing when you have this idea and you see it become a reality. That must be, and especially when it was your first book, that must have been quite a thrill for you.
It was not what I expected. And I think I'd be a really different writer if it hadn't have been that book, or if it hadn't done as well as it did, or if it hadn't been Mike. I didn't have that really long journey that a lot of writers have, and I'm grateful for everything I have, but sometimes I hadn't, as I said, learned all that much when this happened. I was just, like months before, still teaching and working in film and freelancing, and all of a sudden I was, had this book. So it was a really interesting experience, and I couldn't have asked for like a better editor, agent, everybody on board. They're always, it's fun. Our email threads are fun. It's a hoot. I love it.
That's wonderful. Now, the name of that first book in the series is I Don't Want to Be a Frog. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a great place. If you want to find it, just search out that first book, I Don't Want to Be a Frog.
Yeah.
And I know, Mike, you also write picture books. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think when I wanted to start out in this, which was probably almost 15 years ago, going on my own, I thought that was the only option. I thought I was only going to be able to write and illustrate my own books. But as it's turned out, I've illustrated more for people than I have written my own at this point. And I think what's been really good about that in my own career is I think I'm an illustrator first. I have ideas for books, but I'm not a skilled writer. And so, like getting manuscripts like Dev's pretty early in my career really actually helped me form my own voice. Learning from her about like joke delivery and other things, as I've learned from almost every author that I've worked with, something. Mm-hmm. So, like I love writing, but it's definitely more of a challenge for me.
Yeah.
He's a really good writer.
I was just going to say, people who didn't see Dev roll her eyes when Mike said he wasn't all that good of a writer. I'm curious, Mike, you were sharing that when you read Dev's manuscript, kind of a movie went off in your head and you just started seeing all the illustrations. Is that kind of what happens when you write a book? Is the illustrations happening and then the narrative comes, or what's that process for you?
It is different for sure, because for me, I don't have an entire story. That when I get a manuscript, you have the whole story. And so your images are kind of coming as you're reading the descriptions, the dialogue, and everything else. But with your own book, you don't necessarily have all those things. I mean, ideas for books for me, they'll come from a single line in a conversation, or it'll come from a doodle that I'm drawing or something else. And so it's very different trying to form that idea into a manuscript. And so I have a lot of visuals earlier, and they change too. But when you have the whole manuscript come in, your imagination is almost like kickstarted a little bit. So it's, I don't want to say it's like a cheat code, but it is really nice for the illustration, especially when you connect really quickly with a manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
I've had manuscripts that I've definitely had a harder time with, and it's just trying to find that voice, because you want to always compliment the author's work as much as you can. You don't want to distract from it. You don't want to take away from it. You want to build into it so that the story can just really partner for a good success, right? So,
yeah. Deb, it sounds like this is, Don't Eat Bees is a really, really fun book. But one of the things we love to talk about here is what kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're experiencing Don't Eat Bees? And they can be silly conversations too. It's, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It's not a book that I definitely would think about that, but it's a really good question. I suppose it would be fun to have kids make their own list. I mean, if I think about it as a parent or a teacher, of things they should and shouldn't eat and might eat, and what would be funny if they ate it, and, you know, trying different things. Perhaps that idea of like what you're so sure about, because for me, that's really the essence of this, is this sureness and this confidence and what makes an animal smart, or not smart in this case. Maybe tying in their own animals and the crazy things they've eaten or not eaten. I would hope that it would lend itself to a lot of laughs, if nothing else. Yeah. And Mike put this great menu on the back cover. It's delightful. It's like Chip's Diner, and it has all these foods on it. And I think kids, I hope they make you make a teaching material or something. 'Cause it'd be so great to have kids make their own menu, right? Of what you can find at their house, what their dogs have eaten, what's okay, what's certainly not okay. It'd be fun.
Yeah. My high school yearbook was devoured by our Saint Bernard. Yes, I still have it. But there's large chunks of it missing. So, but mostly of kids I didn't like anyway, so it doesn't really matter all that much. Dev, will we be seeing more Chip books in the future?
Oh, I hope so, but you never know. I'm too long in this industry now to foretell anything. We have a Christmas book coming out in 2023, I think.
I think so, because I have to have the illustrations done by this Christmas. So normally it's at least a year out.
Right. So it's called Elmore the Christmas Moose, and it's really, you know, I'm always reluctant to say something's funny. It's like saying you're cool. I never say I'm funny because it's weird. It's like jinxing it, right? So I try and not say that, but I will say that I wrote that book, and it makes me laugh. So that's good. Like I had that in mind. It's very similar to Bees in that sense. Very earnest, I think, even more so, kind of earnest, you know, on steroids. And it's really fun. And I've gotten to see a little bit of the work that Mike's done, and it's just it's so delightful. I think that word's overused, and it's like absolutely delightful.
Awesome.
It's ridiculously delightful. So that's coming, and maybe more Chip. We'll see. We'll see if Chip has more things or more advice for other dogs or other people.
That would be great. And Mike, I'm imagining there's lots of moose for you to look at up around Alberta as you're illustrating the new book.
Moose are local in my area, actually, so we do see them from time to time. So yeah, no, they're great references, but I don't think I've drawn a lot of moose in my books, and so I've actually really enjoyed working on this one, and it is very funny.
Awesome. Well, Mike, please tell everybody where we can go to find out more about you and find out more about the books that you're writing and illustrating, please.
I guess MikeBoldt.ca is probably the easy one, because that one will point to my Twitter, which is just at Mike Boldt, and it'll point to my Instagram and other things. And that's, I don't have a ton of other places where I operate, but that's mostly it.
Awesome. And Dev, where can we go to find out more about you and find out more about Don't Eat Bees?
Well, when I get round to it, updating my website, you can certainly find the endless quest to deal with one's website. So devpetty.com, and you'll find me probably too much on the Twitter. And you can find our books, hopefully in your local indie bookstore, or request it, always at the library. This will be out, May 31st, I think?
Yeah.
And then I have another different book coming out in June, and and this is our best-selling illustrator here, right? Don't be modest. So he's doing just amazing stuff. So you'll find his stuff everywhere.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
It is awesome.
Congratulations to both of you. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Don't Eat Bees, Mike Boldt, the illustrator, and Dev Petty, the author. My friends, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It was a blast.
Thank you so much. It was really good.
Please be sure to join us for next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Melanie Watt. She'll be here to celebrate Scaredy Squirrel Gets a Surprise. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, we would love it if you could join us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Reading With Your Kids on TikTok, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We have a great Pinterest page. And you can also visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Sign up for our free newsletter. And also feel free to use that contact button at the top of the page to let us know what we're doing well here on the podcast. Let us know what we could be doing better. And also let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guests, Dev Petty and Mike Boldt. Please be sure to check out Don't Eat Bees. Also want to thank our sponsors, Janet Fox. Remember her book, Carry Me Home, a beautiful reminder that homelessness is not hopelessness. Also want to thank Gramps Jeffrey. Please be sure to check out I Don't Want to Turn 3. And of course, we want to thank our friend at Minds in Motion, Scott Feld, the author of Dax to the Max, a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Ashley Contreras. Want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.